The National Education Policy 2020, which was approved by the Union Cabinet of India on July 29, 2020, outlines the vision of India's new education system. The new policy replaces the previous National Policy on Education 1986. The policy is a comprehensive framework for elementary education to higher education as well as vocational training in both rural and urban India. Himachal Pradesh and Karnataka have become the first states to implement the new policy. In this panel discussion, moderated by Prakash Iyer, founder and CEO, Leadership Works highlight India Inc.'s view on the new policy. The feedback by eminent panelists are noteworthy. I would like to invite Prakash Iyer, founder and CEO, Leadership Works, to moderate this panel discussion on the topic National Education Policy 2020, India Inc. Perspective.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ETGovernment Education, Innovation and Skills Summit, which is brought to you in association with ET World. We have a fantastic panel here today to talk to you about the National Education Policy 2020. What does India Inc. think of it? What does it mean for corporate India? More important, what does it mean for a country of young people in terms of education, in terms of skill development, and ensuring the employability of this workforce? And to share their insights with you today, I'm happy to introduce to you our panel. And first up, we've got Pallavi. Pallavi Tyagi is the Executive Vice President and CHRO at Capgemini. We've got Raj Raghavan, who's the Vice President and Head of Human Resources of an organization that perhaps helps a country of travelers stay on time. That's right, Indigo. And we've got Nathan, who is Partner and Chief Talent Officer at Deloitte India. And Chief Talent Officer is probably the best title you can have for a man of many, many talents. And we've got Dhanashree. Dhanashree is the VP HR at Bharti AXA. Insurance, a sector that's in the news, and indeed one of the bigger employers in this country. And they will be sharing their thoughts and insights on a policy that's been long overdue. The last time we had a national education policy was like 35 years ago, 1986, if I remember. And so what's new in this? And does this really solve for some of the issues that talent faces in India, that education and young people might be facing? So without further ado, let's get started. And I want to start with you, Pallavi. And what I want to hear from you is really that one big thing that comes to your mind, just one thing. What do you see as the biggest skill gap when you see people entering the workforce in India today?
So thanks for that, Prakash. Good morning. And our educational system, if you look at it, is balanced. It just needs to have a more balance of academics and vocational subjects and trainings as part of the curriculum. This will help the students entering the workforce with more practical knowledge. Also, I think the curriculum courses need to keep abreast of technologies that are changing the workplace. We have a digital revolution ongoing. There is rapid technological advancements, and therefore there is a need to take cognizance of these rapid changes of the digital world and emerging technologies, and then incorporate them into the curriculum. So that's something that we need to look at when we have people entering the workforce, so that there are no skill gaps.
Great opening thoughts, Pallavi. And I sometimes wonder, Nathan, what really should be the goal of education? You know, we talk about skill gaps and we talk about ensuring employability, but you know, from your perspective, what would you say should be the goal for education in our country?
Okay, the goal of education in our country, well, there is a quote that comes to my mind. Education is what remains long after one has learned in school. I mean, this is a quote of Albert Einstein that I remember. And I think that kind of sums up. The goal of education is to be a better person, be more useful to themselves, to the world around, answer real world problems, and make this place a better place to live than when they entered it. More importantly, I would say that it's a bit about maximizing their own potential, discover what they are good at, and excel in it. I would say put education to good use. Purpose of education.
Super, super. Great thoughts. And I know, Dhanashree, you've got some fairly strong views around what's what education is doing or not doing. And I'm just keen to hear from you. What do you wish the education system would do, which it's not doing right now?
I would love it if it encouraged more curiosity, and I keep reflecting that a lot of books that we learned, that we grew up in, was someone else's perspective of what history did or what history was or what subjects were. That's not my perspective, but I by hearted it completely, and that's what I produced in the exam. I wish that I got an opportunity to form my perspective, and that's what we love. People having when we look at the workplace. Voice your views, voice your opinions, have a point of view, and that is what I would have loved education to encourage and do.
Super. More curiosity, less rote. My goodness. Yeah, that's one word that perhaps defines what for many of us has been education, I think, at some level. Raj, your thoughts. It's easy to start thinking that, there's lots that's wrong, there's a lot that needs fixing, but at some level, we are all beneficiaries of a fantastic education system. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what would you say is one thing that Indian education does well? What's working well within Indian education?
I would say two things, Prakash. One is rote. A lot of us have a lot of view on rote, but rote certainly helps, at least me. I don't have to remember my math tables anymore. I learned them when I was 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and up to 7 years. I just don't have to go and use my calculator for it. That is one, good or bad. The second one, and this one is very interesting, our undergrad education when it comes to technology, specifically IITs and NIT, are really world class. In fact, if you look at the master's students that go to the United States or Europe or Australia or New Zealand or Singapore, these are the ones that get picked up very first. Now, you can always say it's a brain drain, they're not going to come back. But I think these two are good parts, I would say, of our education system.
Sure. I completely agree with at least one half of what you've said, Raj, and I think that's a good place to try and ask other people, because I think the bit about higher education and the IIT is clearly something that's given us a huge edge in the world. But I'm just wondering if the other panelists, anyone has a view on this idea that rote is good. I mean, I could argue that since you have a calculator anyways, why do you need to know your tables? And doesn't give you an edge, does it?
By that logic, Prakash, Google is there to give you all the answers. And you don't have to even go to school if you had to just use Google. That's just my view. I mean, rote just helps you.
I know
my son doesn't like it, but I'm still old-fashioned.
So that's my question really to the others. Is this an old-fashioned idea? Is the next generation, I worry sometimes. They don't need to spell because there's a auto correct on their phones. They don't need to multiply because the calculator does it for them. And maybe that allows them to perhaps think about creativity and a whole new world, which perhaps some of us younger folks on this, didn't have the time or attention for. Any thoughts?
So there was a study that was done, and this was done by a bunch of people. They noticed that people who had studied a lot of the scriptures, and they were able to recite it when they were very young because they went and learned that, those people did exceedingly well in the STEM studies. Mm-hmm. And possibly at a very early age, this notion of rote, trying to recollect almost instantly, is something that helps to train the mind. So in a way, what I would say is what Raj believes in, I belong to that school as well. It's good in the beginning. I'm not saying that you got to do this all your life, but in the early stages, it really helps the brain develop itself. And of course, you can always add layers to it, but it certainly helps.
So Prakash, the way I look at it is also that India in the last few decades has seen new methodologies of education as well. So with the advancement of education, we see great development, whether it's be the field of economics, we have unemployment rates, which are low. We are encouraging entrepreneurship and independent thinking, and our focus on STEM education, just as Nathan spoke about, also develops brilliant technologists, medical professionals all over the world. So definitely there are many things that we are doing right.
Sure. And I just think this is a good point for young people to remember. And I just wanted to provoke that discussion. But Raj, I certainly think there is a lot of merit, and I completely agree with you, in just the hard work, the rigor of trying to learn something. And I think that as an early practice is terrific. And I think for young people, good idea to remember that it's not a substitute. It's not about saying I can avoid the hard work. If you do those hard yards early, I think the gains will stay with you for the rest of your life, and you can use your calculator for more important stuff. And I think that's a good way to look at it. So yeah, great one. So I thought we'll move now to some of the specifics of what you could look at as, let's say, highlights of the national education policy. And something that interested me, Nathan, was this whole area of a separate gender inclusion fund, as it were. And I think it's such a perfect idea. And I'm specifically not asking one of the women this question, because I think that's the stereotype that we need to break. But what do you see, Nathan, as some of the things that we can still do to ensure that in the years ahead, we get a lot more women finishing school, going through college, and joining the workforce? What needs to be done?
First of all, I think it's a very important step that the government has taken, because if you talk about inclusion, this is the single biggest important step that NEP has advanced for several reasons. Number one, if you look at just the gender diversity, it's always 50-50 any point in time, anywhere in the world. But if you look at women coming into work, then the percentage starts to drop. First, at the education level itself. So unless you have, the reason why why children, girl child is asked to stay at home, because they are asked to do all kinds of work at home, little realizing that they need to go to schools. So the government, in trying to get an education fund to bring children to school and making sure that those people, beyond getting the education, they also get the support, is going to be important. People, when they come into the industry, I talk about what happens in the industry. When they come into the industry, after 3 years, they just fall off the table. Why? Because they are married, then they are into child rearing, and then after which, it's getting them back into the organizations is another level of effort. So I think when you start early, and all of these has to do with policies. Today, if you look at, as a policy, if there is something which is mandated, things work. Where do you find the greatest diversity of women anywhere in any organization? It's the government. Why? Because the government mandated that. Today, if you see Arundhati Bhattacharya as having been the head of SBI, is because there was somebody who thought it important to put this as part of the policy. So getting a gender fund and making sure that inclusion happens, and the girl child is made beyond just encouraged, there is money behind all of that intention, goes a very long way. That's my view.
Sure. I didn't know this, but the government, interesting thought that the government is in fact the most diverse employer. Indigo, I thought, might be a close second, Raj. What's the ratio there?
Yeah,
It
depends on where you put the middle line, Prakash. I'm more focused on pilots and having more women fly, and there the ratio is not 50-50 as Nathan says. But as a company, we are more than 50-50. In my own team in HR, I'm probably 70-30. So depends on where you draw the.
Yeah. But I like the way you're looking at this, Raj, which is to say that the real test for us is when, let's say, in people flying planes, we've got a 50-50 ratio, because I think HR has probably been one of the lower hanging fruits, and across organizations, that's the easier one that we've managed to kind of fix. And Pallavi, I want to try and turn to something you said upfront, which is really this area of more practical skills being imparted. And I think the NAP does talk about an increased focus on internships, on experiential learning, perhaps industry education partnerships. Just wondering, is there something that you think specifically corporates can do to perhaps accelerate that process of more internships, better partnerships?
So we at Capgemini, Prakash, have a very robust internship program where we take students as interns in their first year of course itself. And this could be leading to a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on, of course, what the academic institute is wanting, and of course, the projects that we provide as well. Going forward, what we could do more and more is participation of the industry in the education institutions in terms of reviewing the learning content, promoting the market business demand driven vocational courses. So those are some of the areas I think we can focus on as well.
Hey, Prakash, can I add something?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
We tried one experiment way back, which is we got a bunch of students coming in from school. And I'm talking about people who are in the 9th standard and 10th standard, and got them to experience corporate life for a very short window. Maybe 2 weeks or so, they came in and they went around, and it left a deep impression, just not on the students, but also on the people who were on the floor and working with them. It brought in them a sense of responsibility, because many of them have children of their own, and they were looking at what they could be doing. Some of them have gone up and they've done very well for themselves. The other one, so that's one part. But I'll tell you what it requires sponsorship and a lot of diligence. So after some time, you start to wonder whether this is feasible. But the one which can really be done, and this is chiming onto what Pallavi just talked about as students, we are also looking at faculty. In fact, we are looking at the deans of several institutions. We bring them once a year. We call it a Dean's Summit. Beyond all what Pallavi mentioned, beyond doing that, we address for 2 days. There is a symposium, and then we talk about what are the collective issues that we have, what can we do to partner, and so on. And since they are in such positions where they can influence thought of what can happen in their own institutions, it just makes it a lot more easy, beyond just the sense of saying, yes, we must participate, but it's kind of directional.
What a great idea to get school students perhaps to come into work and experience what that's like. And Dhanashree, if you were to advise educational institutions on what is it that they can do to perhaps make that first step forward to get more internships, build better partnerships with industry, what would be your advice?
So what I would say is, I think first is at a curriculum co-creation stage itself. If there is a forum which sort of allows a lot of practical side, application side, along with concept to come in, that would be the first step. We do have a process whereby, internships and standard internships are already there, part of MBA curriculum, but it happens at postgraduate levels, perhaps in the earlier stages itself, which is the high school, and the early years of college. If students have the chance of application, a lot of international education focuses on application very, very early on. And that is something which will sort of bring in a good balance at different points of time. And like what Nathan said, I think that integration through the process rather than waiting for certain years and above to happen is what I feel will be quite a big change.
So I have a quick rejoinder to that. And I know one of the challenges I see is that, all of us and I can say this now, all of you in the corporate world are so busy with work. If someone actually came to you and said, I need your help with co-creating the curriculum, you know, I don't mean to put you in a spot, but would you actually be able to take the time and spare, make the time to do something like this? Would you be interested?
Yeah, I would love to. Absolutely. I think, it's also a part of giving back to the community.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
I'm sure as corporates, we do have, this is not something which is a part of CSR. And, encouraging a lot of this in co-creation for the country community would be something I'm sure all of us would love to do. And find time to do that, because I guess in many ways we are here in HR because I guess the value we carry is making a difference. I find that very, very common in most HR professionals. So I'm
Super,
sure that it will be a
super.
welcome opportunity.
So
So quick
Prakash,
show of hands. All those willing to partner in co-creating curriculums or helping institutes to get it right, hands up, please.
I
so
do that
Prakash, as
already.
we are doing that,
We do that.
You do that already.
Yeah,
Super
I do
stuff.
that
But
already.
that's what I
Yeah.
was saying, that I've already helped some colleges develop a few years ago a diversity and inclusion curriculum for their academic institution. That the topic is important, and a lot of the leading edge research is happening in organizations. We've already done that.
excellent work. And I'm so delighted to hear this. And for those of you from educational institutions listening in or watching this, you've just got 4 fantastic leads if you're looking for some help in trying to build this connect between your educational institution and industry. Raj, I want to turn to you with something that I found was very interesting in the new NEP, which is really this area of saying that they should have no hard separation between arts and sciences or vocational and academic training, and perhaps try and build them together. And one of the suggestions there was, for instance, that the IITs should be teaching humanities, and there should be no exclusive education institutions. Your thoughts, Raj? What does this mean?
Well, you know what? I grew up in one of the IITs. My growing up years were in IITs. My father used to be in IIT Madras, and I used to always wonder, why is IIT only a technology institution, and why isn't it teaching, for example, economics, econometrics, human resources, and all of that. This said, just so we know, this is not new in the NEP 2020. IITs had indeed moved to teaching humanities for a long, long time now. I think it serves 2, 3 purposes, Prakash. One is, like Dean Raj in ISB, where I do my doctoral program, says, it's only now I realize that I've been focusing, or I've been barking at the wrong tree all my life. And his specialization is business management. And he says the biggest problem in the industry today is people and how you deal with human resource issues. And I think that's exactly the point I would make of IITs and NITs, etc. If all you can do is to churn out more and more technologies, where are you going to get the balance between the two? Now, when you implement it, Prakash, there are unintended consequences of it. There is, I mean, I can say even now there's a big divide between the humanities curriculum and the professors that teach humanities in IITs versus the rest. How you're going to integrate them into saying that, I'm not here to just teach sociology or teach activism, but I blend into something more naturally. How we are going to do that is important, because if you look at a lot of unintended consequences in IITs, it all happens when this discord between the two streams happen. That needs to get ironed out, is my view.
And Pallavi, have you seen this play out in the organizations? When you look at leaders, you look at managers, do you sometimes wish that all those hard nut techies also had a bit of the softer humanities impact in their education and training?
So if it doesn't happen during the academic curriculum time, and I think most curriculums nowadays are more holistic in their nature than just being focused on a specific area. So they do give you the broader management or the broader life sciences, arts, science background, even if it's a technological related, degree. and for sure, I mean, once you have employees entering the organizations, the idea always is to bring in holistic development and provide the necessary skills training, whether it is soft skills training, behavioral skills training, or technological skills training. So the focus is to make a colleague of yours well-rounded in the work that they do. So either it's like a T approach, right? You can either take in-depth approach towards the subject that you're in, or you can have the breadth of span of being a people manager, and both are fine. And that's where we support our employees' journey with their career.
If I add to it, I think as a country, we need independent research, which is at a certain world-class level for an advancement to happen. And somewhere it sort of, if so I differentiate this, and a lot of more than my reference point is what is it that I would do for my child, what is it I would do for anyone who is in my circle of influence for higher education. And I sort of get stuck because beyond the IITs, I find this dearth of independent research which is coming in, and India has so much of it. If we look at the ground level innovation which keeps happening, and we are known for Jugaad, how do we take it to the level where it is scalable, where it can go to a certain world class level? And I find IITs sort of bridging the gap, not just from a technology point of view, but in all domains.
Well, I must add, I think what the business schools do very well is to give everyone a slightly more humbling feeling when you suddenly see so many other people out there who seem to be so much smarter than you are. That might be a pretty good first step in that direction of building your skills. Nathan, turning to you, there's some mention in this NEP about teachers training and potentially some standards for teachers. And I thought one of the things that may not have got addressed perhaps is this whole area of, what can we do to attract teachers or better quality teachers? And what can we do to make that happen? Any thoughts?
Very early, I heard this quote: "He who can does, he who cannot teaches." I think there must be a different way in which you really attract the best of the best into teaching. Personally, if you ask me, what's my alternate career, I would go into teaching, or rather helping people discover themselves. Teaching is a euphemism of saying, I'm going to say this and this is what you're going to learn. I think if you you really need people who can come in, who have it deep within themselves that, yes, this is what I want to do. My contribution is helping people discover their edge. And many of them don't want to become teachers because at one end, I don't think they're compensated very well. It's in very rare institutions on portals of learning where you really have people being paid top dollars. So you really need a structure that gets them there. And two, for many of them to believe that they have everything which is being supported along with whatever that they have as just the wish and desire, which is a lot to do with educating the facilitators.
Sure, but I do believe, Nathan, that while it's important for us to be able to attract these, better quality professors in institutes, and like you said, foreign universities, they do research and they make top dollar. I thought the bigger challenge is at a more fundamental level of saying, how can we ensure that that first class teacher that all of us have, that kindergarten teacher, that lady who taught you, math in class 2, all of us, I think, owe them a hell of a lot of gratitude for what they've done to make us happen.
See, there is
what can we do to change that? And I think Dharashri had a great point when I was chatting with her on this subject. Dharashri, you talked about salaries and, what's your thought on this?
I would echo what Nathan said. I think, first is the skill set itself. So if you see the entire preschool domain, it's largely unregulated, where you have schools mushrooming almost anywhere and everywhere. And where, I guess the qualification minimum, it's like if you're not getting anything, you sort of become a teacher. And it's as, basic as that. And it's also unfortunate because those are the early years. So somewhere, I guess, if we are able to increase the level of skill with status need being met with higher compensation, the quality of life which is possible, and the ask itself is sort of raised up, perhaps that's the first step. The second is, even for other teaching, I think we've not revised the so-called criteria of net set, which were the teaching qualifications required. We've not sort of made them current, modern, especially for the school, for the schooling to happen. So I guess a lot of revision there is due, with a holistic view of, bringing in compensation, bringing in elements. And I love what government did, for example, to get, working force into bureaucracy, for example. There was a switch which was sort of advised where people were called for. I'm sure, like Nathan said, he'll be a fantastic teacher, and I would love to have him on board. And but it needs to be attractive enough to attract that quality of skill there. So I would love all these factors to be raised up.
I just have a
Yeah,
different view. I completely agree with both
yeah,
of
Raj.
you, Prakash. I just have a different view, slightly different view. I
Yeah,
think if you were to just use the lens of being factful, lots of things have changed. And from the time we all went to kindergarten school to where we are today, we do not have the Azim Premji universities. We do not have Shiv Nadars. We do not have NEP 2020, which talks of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 as against 10 plus 2. I think a lot of these are steps in the right direction. And in fact, I work with an NGO outside of India, and my focus is specifically on teacher development and teacher skill development. And that country spends a lot of time and energy and money on sending teachers outside of the country, in spite of knowing there could be an immigration risk. And this is a South Asian country. It's not it's not one of those U.S. European countries. So I'm hopeful that things are changing. There is a lot of hope, is what I have if I were to be a teacher in my next birth.
super. And you know what? You don't have to wait for the next birth, Raj. I mean, guys like you should, and Nathan, and I'm sure Pallavi and Darashri too. Teaching can be so much fun for all of us. And I'm sure secretly inside each of us is a teacher waiting to give back and perhaps help younger people to get it right. And I love Nathan's wish list of 3 things. And to Dhanashri's point about Nathan would she'd love to have him as a great teacher. I think that's the 4th one to add to the wish list, teacher salaries to match Deloitte standards. I mean, life will be easy. So, yeah. Pallavi, there's something else that got talked about in the NEP, which is this whole idea of something which is probably already there, which is to teach in mother tongues or regional languages, as opposed to perhaps looking at English. And at first, it did strike me as a little odd, because I always thought one of the things that has given India an edge, perhaps in this entire outsourcing business around the world, is our English skills compared to, for instance, one of those neighbors around. So I'm just wondering, this focus on ensuring regional languages, is that something that you would support, or would you have said, maybe a good idea to get people to start, get more English speaking people coming into the workforce?
Interesting question. So let's look at some research data over here. So research suggests that using the language the child is most comfortable with in early school years improves attendance and learning outcomes, and the ability to learn new languages as well. So studies from around the world also show that it increases classroom participation, reduces the number of dropouts, and grade repetitions as well. When good learning happens, we all know that children have higher self-esteem. They adjust to the classroom that provides a positive and fearless environment. If a child is taught in a language they do not understand, none of this would happen. The NEP 2020 does not discourage the learning of English, but rather focuses the child to start learning in the language that he or she is most comfortable, and then learn a second or a third language.
Brilliant. So let me play a bit of the devil on this one. And one of the criticisms about organizations, great successful organizations like the ones all of you represent, is there an undue focus on English speaking ability when you look at hiring talent?
I think in our line of business, there are two distinct streams. The one which is client facing, the one where you get to understand what there, the accent is certainly on understanding what a client wants, etc. So there is a certain leaning towards people who are good communicators. So English as a language is important. Then there is a whole host of work beyond people who meet clients who are exceedingly good in the jobs. Our best, and I can say this with an element of pride, is our best auditors are people who may not be the best of English speakers ever. They're outstanding in their craft. They're very, very good. They do not speak the Queen's English. So there are a whole host of people. For example, a lot of people that we have in areas like technology are people who may not be strong in English. I don't think we need to have them strong in that kind of a language. They can be in any language. As long as they are good in the language that they are good at, which is technology, it's fine with us.
Question, a lot of this is role-based, right?
Yes.
So you look at the competencies you need for the role. So you look at technical competence, you look at the soft skill competence, and then the communication. So as an example, I was working in Poland for a couple of years. I didn't speak Polish, but I still did my job and I delivered. Right? So language is important, but more important is communication, right? And that becomes more critical.
Yeah, but again, I'm probably belaboring a point, but I'm just trying to think of, let's say, I used to have in a former role, I had colleagues from Korea, for instance, or from China, who are technically very sound, who are leading their country's business, doing extremely well, fantastic folks, whose English accent certainly wasn't something that you and I might have been comfortable with, whose language choice of words might have been a bit of a challenge, but that didn't stop them from becoming fabulous leaders on a global stage. And I just wonder if we are being a little hard on ourselves by expecting that our leaders must not make grammatical errors or must have neutral accents. And I'm saying maybe that's not such a big deal. That's really the thought. And I want to take it to Raj for your last thoughts on this one, Raj. But I said last for you because every time I'm on one of your flights, I get reminded of the advantage of being multilingual as you announce that, our crew speak the following languages. And I just say that reflects the country that's traveling here. We need people who can speak our language, and it's such a huge advantage. But over to you, Raj.
No, that was the point I was going to make. It depends on who your clients are, what your clientele is. If I go to an airport and if I'm a first-time flyer, I'm most comfortable if someone spoke Tamil with me. And the same with an in-flight experience. And we encourage people to speak in their native tongue. And that has created what I would call probably one of the best customer experiences you can have. I can't have a low-cost airline that would only be upper-lipped and speak a language that most of my flyers don't understand. Much to the point that Pallavi made earlier and Nathan made, it depends on what are you expecting these people to do. But oftentimes, I've been surprised at people's ability to pick another language, especially a neutral language like English. And to me, English is not even a foreign language. It's as Indian as it can get. And the dual language policy that the country has always had, I think has made us compete globally. Where China, and I've lived in China for 2 years, and they took a lot of effort to teach English in their schools. And for us, it came naturally. We may not be able to speak English so well, but our ability to understand and appreciate the grammar and the nuances of the language is probably even better than those that gave us the language. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for and who you're trying to serve.
Great thoughts, great thoughts. As we try and now bring this to an end, I want just two last questions, and I want to address them to the entire panel. The first question is really a quick response to as you think of the National Education Policy 2020, what's the one highlight that gladdens your heart and makes you say, wow, I think we've got it right here? What's that one thing?
I would say it brings down the exit points in someone's life or career. You know, when you have a 10+2 education and you drop off at the 8th grade, you're nowhere. But if you look at 5+3+3+4, you're gaining something in between. And when you're exiting, you're probably exiting with a focus on employability or skill.
Super. Yeah, multiple exit points. What else?
Equal focus being given to academics and co-curricular activities.
Excellent. Yeah, and something that obviously is very passionate or close to your heart, Pallavi. Yeah. What else?
Unemployability is a better issue for us than unemployment. And this particular NEP policy addresses just that. It just makes a lot of people a lot more employable, and that gladdens my heart.
Super. Unemployability versus unemployment. Great one. Yeah. Dhanashri?
So tagging on both of them, what Nathan and Pallavi said, which is I love the focus on vocational education, because I feel one of the pieces that we miss as a country compared to China is dignity of labor. And I feel the minute vocational education is emphasized, people start earning, that's where the livelihood start to shift. And I feel that's a great point, that it will give respect, it will sort of bring that visibility, income to a lot of people, and that is what will bring in a big shift.
Super. Thanks. And the last question then for all four of you would be this one. And I guess what the NEP 2020 tries to do is to say, hey, how can we ensure that the future for the next generation is bright? For all those young kids coming into school and coming out of college, what can we do to make sure that they become better people, as Nathan started off with, or become better human beings, make India a better place? So my question to the four of you is this, which is to say, knowing what you do now about education and employment, what would be your advice to your 18-year-old self? So I want you to imagine, that you are now that 18-year-old going back into college. What would be your advice to that younger self?
At the time when I was 18, I felt that if you don't get what you like what you get. Today, after several years, I would still give myself the same advice, except the accent would be as, how can I get better at becoming better? I think that is what, anything that we can do. I wanted to be an engineer, ended up in maths and the humanities world. But if I could have been told at that point in time, can you get better at becoming even better? Maybe I would have gone a few paces ahead, I guess, being a better person.
Okay. Get better at getting better. Yep.
I would have just loved perhaps, and I think I was perhaps segregated into the arts, science, commerce sort of thing, very, very early on in life. And I would have loved an interdisciplinary sort of thing, where I loved to be a chef, or I would have loved to be, a marketeer, and be in HR, and, and design houses. And I would have loved to have all these interdisciplinary things, and perhaps experience things differently. So in fact, I'm quite I wish this was there much earlier, and start studying all over again, so that I start experiencing all of this. So I would sort of love that piece.
Great, thank you. Pallavi?
Yeah, I would love to have the focus now that we have on understanding employability related strengths and weaknesses of students, and delivering personalized inputs for improvement. So what that happens is, if you are going through that, there's a regular review of progress made by oneself, so the gaps can be effectively filled, and you're much more prepared for the work. That would be my.
Sure. But what would you be telling yourself? This is what you wish would happen around you, but what would you be telling yourself?
That's exactly what I would like to have focused on as well while I was studying. I did my engineering and MBA, especially during the engineering times, Prakash.
Okay, Pallavi, great stuff. Thanks. Raj, last words.
What I see as opportunities today were never there when I was 18 years old. And if I could see the same opportunities, I would have told myself, go for it, Raj. You don't have to prepare, for JEE all the time and fail and feel like a lost soul, and got into undergrad in economics. And I would have probably said, I could be an econometrics professor, and got done with it, rather than deeping down my sorrow for the first 1 year in my undergrad degree.
Super stuff. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time and for your thoughts. And I think it's been incredible fun listening to you and your insights on what the National Education Policy 2020 really means, not just for corporate India, but indeed for India, for all of us, for young people going out to school and college and looking to find work, for educational institutions. And I guess a policy that's been 35 years in the making probably needed more than the 45, 50 minutes that we've had. But thank you so much for your time. And for those of you listening in, I do hope you've enjoyed this as much as we've enjoyed bringing this to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prakash. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, speakers, for your time and inputs. Now we'll move to the last session of the day. Stay tuned.